Hello and welcome to the York Creatives podcast. My name is Ben Porter, and each week you can join me as I chat to someone from York's creative community. This week's guest is Nikolaus Morris. Nikolaus is a freelance writer, director and animator working for agencies and production companies across the UK, as well as writing and developing his own original content. In this episode we chat about the illusion of trying to solve the balance of life, how modern audiences are becoming more and more sophisticated, and about not being afraid to chop work out of your portfolio and go after new pursuits. So Nikolaus, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Ben.
So as a freelancer, you must get to work on lots of different kinds of projects. What would your favourite type of project be?
I think my favourite type of project is normally something where we're thinking about the audience from the very beginning, and not only what we want them to know at the end of watching, say, an ad or an explainer or a documentary, but also the effect we want it to have on them. So I've done quite a range of projects, for example, stuff that is designed for live events. So the opening of a new building or the opening of an event. And there we know that we want it to be something really exciting with like thumping drums. We might project it sort of 2 stories high. And we know from the very beginning that we want something that once everyone's kind of like, had their canapes and a glass of wine, they're going to be really excited and pumped for what might follow for the rest of that event. And then they try and put those things on YouTube and they look terrible because they're over the top.
Sure.
But then again, in a music video, I love thinking, we're going to have a nice twist ending, and that's going to be, a little emotional journey for the audience. Or in a little documentary, we want someone to go, wow, I never thought of that.
So in the situations where you get to have creative control over your projects, do you find there are particular themes that you return to that you try and get in there, or particular subjects that you're really interested in?
I'm trying to distinguish now between the work that I do on my own, or the original content that I'm trying to create, and then the work that is commissioned, where you are, then making it for someone else, and it's their themes and a lot of their sort of mandatory elements that you've got to respond to. I think then in my own work, which now is going to scare off a lot of potential corporate clients, but in my own work, my script writing, I think disappointment is a very, very big thing. I think I like, for some reason, writing stories about people who are maybe disappointed adults and are not happy with the things they expected not turning out. I'm quite interested in that in the context of sci-fi. And some of the quite startling and maybe unhelpful things people do to remedy that disappointment. So I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. I might stop exploring it at some point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to look at those times when things don't always work out. I was listening to a photography podcast recently, and the first question was some generic question, and the person who was on it took it in a completely different direction, and they were talking about their problem with TED Talks and that kind of thing of like, I was in this bad place and now I'm out of it. And he was saying that for a lot of people, they don't get out of it. They make things to cope with being in this place.
Absolutely.
And he gets so fed up of this narrative that we're constantly fed that, things will be bad and then they'll be okay and then your life will be perfect and you can go on, story over. And he's saying the story's not over. People, a lot of work needs to exist in that space.
You're completely right. And I think that it can be really damaging to say to people that the outcome you should be looking for is some kind of balance. You'll solve it. I don't think you ever will. I think that things don't stay the same for very long. And even if you manage to find some kind of balance, that can be tipped over and disturbed quite easily. And I think audiences are becoming quite savvy to that. And I think, coming back to commissioned work, I think audiences for adverts and also for B2B content are living real full lives. And I think they're becoming quite savvy to some of the tropes that you might find in a lot of heavily produced video. And I think respond much more productively to what I call an eye-level conversation, where you might be selling a product and to a business owner who is having a lot of real frustration and fears. And why not address those? And why not say, we see what you're building, and not misleading with overly glossy kind of ideas of what something can do.
Yeah, that's often important to try and find the human element in it rather than just looking through pages and pages of brand guidelines and marketing talk. And I mean, we in the film company that I run, Hewitt and Walker, we just won a pitch recently by basically tearing apart everything that this company had done previously and saying, like, this is what you've done time and time again. We want to do something completely different. And they went for it, which we didn't think they were going to. So we kind of went out on a limb, but it worked.
Which is brilliant. And I love that people are sort of taking those chances.
So tell me about some of your recent projects.
I've just worked with York-based agency Carrion and Box to create some video projections for an experience that they created for Burberry, which was shown in London. With a production company in Sheffield, Matobo, I worked on a lot of animated content for internal use at the BBC. And also with Matobo, we just made a couple of little web-based spots for Sheffield City region, which Sean Bean narrated, where we were going into factories, getting these fun drone shots of pallet makers and chocolatiers. And that was a lot of fun to do and had a lot of energy to it. And I learned so much meeting lots of different business owners, everywhere from Bakewell to Doncaster. So that was great fun.
Yeah, Sheffield's really pushing its maker ethos at the moment. Yeah. I'm actually doing a project with Sheffield Council, and they're talking about different makers and cooks and all kinds of... They seem to be really celebrating their people, which is a really good thing to see.
They are. They're celebrating a lot of their heritage industries too. It's really wonderful that they're doing that and that people are appreciating that made in Sheffield mark as well when they're shopping for those products.
Yeah, it's a good city. I used to live there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, before I came to York, I used to live in Sheffield.
Oh,
so
cool.
I was there 96 to 2008.
Oh, brilliant. It's a cool place.
Yeah. So if you look at your current inspirations and things that are, drawing you to want to make moving work, what are you looking at?
I'm really excited at just how much content people are watching and how sophisticated it's making audiences. It's a really long time since I've heard someone say, I saw something and I didn't get it. And I think it's because we're so used to seeing screen images. We're so used to seeing fast images and putting them together and filling in the blanks as well. I've seen some amazing 6-second videos or adverts where the pace is the kind of thing that people would have really been scared of doing, where one sort of split second image just imprints on you. And I see that also going into high-end television and cinema, where there are really cool things happening with story, with audio, with visual images. And people are reading so much on Twitter and online. I think that the audience member of the future is a really exciting person to try and design content for. So
you live and you work in York and various other places. How do you find this city, and particularly the creative scene? What do you think we're doing well, and what do you think could be better?
I love living in the city. I feel really fortunate to live here. I think that any kind of creative career, particularly a freelance creative career, to try and strive for a traditional work-life balance is almost impossible. I think it's a really difficult thing to do that. And because York has such a comparatively high quality of life, it is a real privilege to be able to live and work here. Also, you're on the East Coast Main Line. I can pop to London and back for business or pleasure quite easily. I can get to Edinburgh easily. I can get to Manchester, to Sheffield, to Leeds very easily. So I think our location, I think the lifestyle here, and also the innovation and the culture here. Our creative scene here is really, really strong. It's really important to be able to check in with your peers after you've spent a long time deep in a project. It's great that it's not mandatory to always be checking in. So if you're half a year working on something, you can still come back and people will be very welcoming and kind and happy to see you. I think that I would like to see a lot more diversity of talent that is promoted in the community, so that, for example, we have enough of a substitute bench that we can fill a production pipeline for specific dates without worrying is that one person with this particular skill unavailable when I need them? Do I have to look to London to find that person? Do I need to look to Manchester? For example, I've never used a florist on a production, but I know that York has one specialist in film and high-end TV, flower arranging, who do a lot of UK TV. And I guess when they're not available, they're not available. Sure. So there isn't much of a bench, and I'm borrowing that term from another podcast called Respect the Process, where they talk about the bench, where you know that if I'm doing this on a Tuesday, there's someone in York that I can definitely get to fulfill this production role. Art directors are very hard to find. There was one wonderful person I worked with in York who I think has now moved to Brighton. You know, these people are really valuable.
So looking to the future, what's next for you in your business?
It's a bit of a pivot at the moment. So I have rebranded. I've got a new website, and I hope that's a website that people have fun browsing. And what I want to do are everything that I've learned over the last few years, the people that I've shadowed, the people that I've worked with, the people that I've met who have very, very specific skills. I want to be able to try and capture the kind of work that's going to let me work with those people and let them do their best work. So I want to create more ambitious work, which means that I'm also competing, I think, less with people and being more embracing, saying, I want to work with this company, with that production company, with this one. I'm not a threat. What I want to do is make really cool things happen in front of the camera, and more scripted content, more writing, tell great stories. And I think that has required an adjustment of the branding, so that the shop front says this is the kind of thing that we make. And that does mean being quite ruthless with the back catalogue and saying that this chapter of what I've done is perhaps over. So this body of work, which was really educational for me, and I worked with some great people, maybe that's not what to display in the shop window. It's like a new season for the brand.
It's good that you can do that, because I think a lot of people maybe have that dream, but they're a bit scared to, chop things out of the portfolio. They think if they don't show everything they've ever done, then someone might not come across this thing. They're always waiting for that perfect moment, trying to give themselves the best odds. But chances are, if you've got something on your website, people are going to come to you for that type of work. So if it's something that you don't want to do, don't put it on there.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I used to be the kind of person who did leave a lot on their portfolio. And there probably still will be some things there that I'm scared to kill, but eventually I will. But it's when people tell you, and particularly when you get out of the sort of starting out stage and you're at an intermediate stage, some of the rejections are very specific, and people will say, they'll tell you what they didn't like, and they'll tell you what put them off. And you have to listen to those people.
Yeah, it's useful. Yeah, it's useful.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you, they want to say hi, or they want to see some of your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, please do drop me an email. Go to my website, which I hope you have fun browsing. And I'm on Instagram, where I sometimes post weird little cartoons on my Instagram stories that then disappear forever, and I don't have to worry about them.
Cool.
And I'm on Twitter. I don't tweet much. Maybe I will after this, who knows? But yeah, all the links, I think, are in the
description. Yeah.
Perfect. So click on those.
Great. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ben.